Hi, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. Today, we'll be teaching you how to set up Google Consent Mode in Shopify using Pandectes and Google Tag Manager. Before we begin, let me give you a quick round of introductions. My name is Felipe Mate, and I am the implementation lead at Elevar. And with me, I have Panos, the co-founder of Pandectes. Panos, would you like to give you an introduction of Pandectes and yourself?
Sure, Felipe, thank you. So, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, this webinar. I am Panos Silingiris. I am one of the co-founders of Pandectes and the lead software engineer since we first launched back in 2018. Pandectes is the solution of choice for a lot of Shopify merchants that are looking for a reliable and effective consent management platform. More than 140,000 stores worldwide have used us, and we are a 5-star average rating app with more than 2,300 reviews, which reflects our commitment to the customer satisfaction.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Panos. All right, so today, you watching this webinar will be learning how to set up Google Consent Mode in your Shopify store so that your tracking respects the user consent preferences and you don't get in trouble. You understand that installing a consent banner is the very first step you need to get compliant, but then there's more to it, okay? We'll be covering today a few different topics. So we'll touch on what is Google Consent Mode, how to set it up using the Pandectes cookie banner, then how to adjust your tracking setup in Google Tag Manager to behave according to it. And as a bonus, you also learn how to configure the Elevar server-side tracking to behave according to the user consent preferences. All right, so let's jump right in. Google Consent Mode is nothing more than a JavaScript API created by Google to store consent preferences from the users on your website, okay? Inside this JavaScript API, you find 7 different consent categories. You have ad personalization, ad storage, ad user data, analytics storage, functionality storage, personalization storage, and security storage, okay? Now, these are categories created by Google that will reflect whatever the user has consented to in the cookie banner on your website. So for example, here we have a Pandectes banner in a website. Is this small banner right here? If the user consents to the use of all cookies by clicking accept, Pandectes will pass these preferences to Google Consent Mode, and then each category of Google Consent Mode will return the value of true, which means that the user has consented to that category of cookie usage, okay? Now, if the user chooses to agree with just some of the cookie categories in the cookie banner, then just some categories in Google Consent Mode will return true, but the rest will return false, okay? So for example, if the user clicks on customize right here, this pop-up will show up where you can manually pick which cookie categories you want to pick or not, okay? We want to allow or not on your session. Then, for example, in this session right here, if I choose to only allow performance cookies, I should see this reflected in my Google Consent Mode as well, okay? So here I see only analytics cookies are granted, and then security storage as well, but everything else is not granted in Google Consent Mode, okay? So the decision of which cookie categories in a consent banner and how they are mapped back to Google Consent Mode is usually taken by the consent banner provider itself, okay? So Pandectes here is doing the job for us to mapping the cookie categories they show up in their banner against Google Consent Mode categories, okay? The only Google Consent Mode category that cannot never and will never return false, regardless of the user preferences, is the security storage category, as you see right here, which by definition enables storage related to security, such as authentication functionality, fraud prevention, and other user protection measures, okay? All right, if you want to learn more about what category in Google Consent Mode means, You can find them out in this article right here that I will open up for you guys. Let me bring this to the presentation. And here you'll find all of the terminology that Google uses for their Google Consent Mode categories. Okay. Awesome. Now let me stop sharing my screen. Okay. Now you may be wondering, what is the benefit of storing user consent preferences in Google Consent Mode? Well, every Google product has a built-in integration with Google Consent Mode, which means that every Google product will always be aware of user consent preferences stored in Google Consent Mode, making it easy for you to manage data privacy in your website if you have Google products tracking users. For example, if you have GA4 implemented in your website, or if you have Google Ads, okay? Google Tag Manager also has a built-in integration with Google Consent Mode, which allows you to apply consent requirements to all of your tags, including the ones that are not from Google products at all. And we'll see this in more detail really soon, okay? So let's stop the talking and start the action, Panos. Panos, I'll ask you to take over and show everyone how to set up a Pandectes banner in the website. So
yeah, sure. Let's go. So let's do that. So here I'm inside the Pandectes application in the demo store that we have created for this webinar. So the first thing that we have to set up is actually set up the banner, as Felipe pointed out. The activation of the banner can be done from the dashboard, but then we have to go in and customize the banner. So we have to move either from the dashboard and click customize, or it can be accessed also from the settings of the application if you go to the banner category. From there, the most important thing is to go in and set up the proper banner type for your banner. For this webinar, we are going to select the preferences banner, which will give us the ability to fine-tune exactly which category the user wants to give consent to. But a good option as well is the accept only banner or the accept decline banner. And in the preferences, it is very vital that we select strict policy. We want to be GDPR compliant, because this means that all cookies and all tracking services are blocked when the page initially loads. Another good option as well is the strict loose policy, which will apply strict settings for the banner, which means that cookies will be blocked for EU and UK, and then loose for all other regions where GDPR or other privacy laws do not apply. So I'm going to save the settings of the banner, having the preferences set up with strict policy, and then I'm going to get back to the dashboard and make sure I activate my banner. Once I do that, I can go to the Elevar store. So I can open the store and see that my banner is activated. I see the banner on top. I can see that it has an accept button, and then there is the preferences button where I can go in and fine-tune my consent as a visitor in whichever category I want to see. As Felipe also pointed out, when it comes to the Google Consent Mode, there are the strictly necessary cookies that are always allowed. Some cookies are always allowed, and this means that the security storage in the Google Consent Mode will also be always granted, because this is a requirement. It's also very important to point out at this point that under the integrations, settings integrations of the Pandectes app, there is also a Google Consent Mode integration. This is the in-app integration. It's one of the two ways that Pandectes offers the Google Consent Mode. This, for the Elevar setup, has to be off, because we're going to implement the Google Consent Mode via the Tag Manager. So it's very important, in order to not have conflicts, that we keep this setting off. By default, is off. So actually, all you have to do is not do anything here at all. Once we do that, we have to switch to the Google Tag Manager. I'm going to open the container setup for this store. And now I will have to go in and set up the Pandectes stack that will make sure that this container, this Google Tag Manager, communicates properly with the banner set up in our store. So let me show the steps that we have to take in order to make this activation. First of all, we have to move to the templates section, click on the search gallery, wait for the gallery to load, click on the search, and there enter Pandectes. The entry of the Pandectes CMP consent mode template will appear. I have to click on that and click Add to Workspace. It will ask me for some permissions, and I have to click on the Add. As soon as I do that, this template will be active here. And then I will have to move back to the tags and make sure to create a tag in my tags. I will click on New. I'm going to search again or go directly to the Pandectes. Select to add that. And here I have some preferences that I can set up. The safest thing is to leave them as they are because it maps the categories of the banner to the consent categories of the Google Consent Mode. Plus, it gives the ability to set up some more advanced capabilities, which we'll not touch in this webinar. So I leave the settings here as they are, and then I move to the trigger, and I select consent initialization all pages so that I make sure this tag loads when the page loads. I just give that a name, Pandectes CMP. I select Save. And at this point, just to make sure everything is okay, I should see a new tag, Pandectes CMP, added in my container. Felipe, do you want me to go in with previewing this integration?
Yeah, it would be awesome if you could show how to validate if the integration is working.
Great. So I'm moving to the preview. I'm going to put the address of the store, which is, if I'm not wrong,
that is store. Yeah, that's right.
It's get Elevar.
Is store.getelevar.com.
We see the preview here, and we have the tag assistant connected. So the first thing that we see is the banner that loads in the preview. I have to move in the tag assistant. At this point, we have taken no action. But if we move down to the events that have run inside the container, in the consent initialization step, the first thing that I'm going to see is the Pandectes CMP tag that has fired, which is pretty awesome because this means that the tag has been activated. And the first event that goes in after the initialization is the consent default event. This is the first thing that has to go inside the data layer. This makes sure that the proper signals have been passed to the Google Consent Mode. So if I look at the consent right now, I'm going to see that on page default says that everything is denied, and then the security storage that Felipe mentioned earlier is granted. This is the thing that we have to see exactly when the container loads, right, Felipe?
That's absolutely correct.
Exactly. If we see the other events, we're going to see that there is no other command run here regarding consent, which is what should actually happen. The container right now waits from the page to give the user to give consent. So if we want to see how this happens, if I go here and select, see, go here and select accept, and then get back to the assistant, I will see that there is a consent update command that got into the data layer that sets everything to granted. And I'm gonna make a small change to the banner so that I can take back the consent. Yep. To make a few tweaks so that we can see the revoke icon actually on the proper place, because it's right outside Shopify.
Oh.
So I'm gonna open again the tag assistant, just to showcase an example where I select specific categories. So here again, I have a consent default. When the page loads, when everything is denied, and then I will select this time to go in and select a specific category. I'm gonna select to give consent to the performance cookies, which are the analytics. So I'm gonna enable this category and then click Save Preferences. Move back to the tag assistant, and then I'm gonna see that only the analytics storage has taken consent. I can select to revoke my consent. And in this point, if I switch back, I'm gonna see that there is an update command that sets everything back to denied because the user revoked the consent. And then I can go back in and select this time to give my consent for performance and targeting cookies, which means both add consent categories and the analytics will be also accepted. I'm gonna save the preferences, go to the tag assistant and see the new consent that has only granted consent to these 4 categories that have to do with performance and add.
So, Panos, let me try to summarize here. So essentially what happens is that once someone implements the Pandectes banner in a website, the banner has a setting that will set default consent values, right? So if the user, for example, lands from Europe in the website, the local law in Europe requires that websites do not track users by default. So Pandectes ensures that this is the default behavior of the website, right?
Exactly, yes, that's correct. So everything is set to denied in this case for Europe.
And does the website has the option to change the default settings to everything granted by default, or not really?
You can do that, but it is not will be compliant for the EU region to have something, to have everything set to granted by default. But there is a mode in the banner that can apply this setting when somebody visits the store from the US, for example, where it doesn't have to be strict. So you can be strict in the EU and have everything blocked by default. So everything sent to denied. And then when somebody visits the store from the US, everything will be granted initially.
Okay. So Pandectes allows for a lot of flexibility when setting those requirements. That's
Sure it does,
awesome.
yeah.
That is awesome. Thanks so much, Panos, for the explanation. All right. Is there something else you want to show right now, Panos?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
So I will take over again. And again, thanks so much for the explanation, Panos. I will now take over and I will explain how to actually apply consent requirements to the tags you have in Google Tag Manager to respect those signals that Pandectes is giving us. So for example, if Pandectes tells us that the user consent is denied, then we don't want tags inside Google Tag Manager to be firing, okay? But for this to happen, we gotta apply consent requirements manually to the tags, okay? So I'll take over the screen share, Panos, and I will share my screen this time. And what I have in here is the exact same container that Panos was working on. So happily in the Elevar store, we actually have the Elevar data layer running, and we have some Google Tag Manager tags that are fired based on Elevar data layer events. Okay, so this is very easy to set up once you are an Elevar customer. And now it's time for us to actually apply constant requirements to this tag. So let's assume that we just did the Pandectes implementation. Everything is working as we wanted. The first way you can add constant requirements to your tags is by simply clicking on any of these tags right here. Click on its body, and as you scroll down, you should see constant settings below, okay? Now, you have three options. You have the not set option, which essentially means nothing was configured for this tag. You have the no additional constant required option, which will tell Google Tag Manager that you are intentional in not giving any constant requirements for the tag itself. And then you can add additional requirements to the tag yourself, okay, by clicking here and adding the constant requirements. Now it's time for you to remember those constant requirements from Google Constant Mode or the constant categories, okay? So we have 7, okay? Here's just showing up 5 of them, but we actually have 7, and you can include the other 2 manually if you want. But let's assume now that we want this tag to fire only if by the time this tag should fire, the add storage constant requirement is enabled by the user, okay? So we can add this one in here and save it, okay? We can do this manually for all of the Facebook tags. So I added this to the account sign up event. I can add this to add payment info events. Just scroll all the way down, require additional consent, and then add storage, okay? And then save it. And now I have 2 Facebook tags that will only fire if by the time this tag is supposed to fire, we see that add storage returns true in Google Constant Mode, okay? Awesome. We can also do this for GA4 tags, okay? So now I have my GA4 tracking setup in place here. I can click here on advanced settings, scroll all of the way down, and then find constant settings. But here you'll see something different, okay? So you see right now that the constant settings here is telling me that there are built-in constant checks, okay? This is something that is special to Google products, okay? So whenever you are handling a Google template inside Google Tag Manager, it could be a GA4 tag template, it can be a Google Ads tag template, it will have built-in constant checks, okay? So it means that if the constant value for this sort of storage is not granted by the tag, by the time this tag is supposed to fire, this tag will change its behavior to be compliant, okay? It's a little bit different than adding manual consent requirements to the tag, okay? If you actually read what it says this tag checks for the status of all consent types listed below. So it's gonna check for the values of these 4 different consent categories. Tags with built-in consent checks typically modify their behavior based on the consent granted, okay? Whereas this additional constant requirement that you can add manually will stop the tag from firing if the constant is not required at all, okay? So you can think of it like this. If there's built-in constant checks, the tag still fires, but its behavior is gonna change based on the constant. If you have additional constant requirements for the tag will not fire unless the constant is granted for that constant requirement you included in the tag, okay? Google also gives this different constant checks a different name. They call it advanced constant mode when the tag changes its behavior, and they call this one the basic constant mode, okay? Now, what is the difference between advanced and basic? Well, the behavior changes, but how does it change with advanced constant mode? If the constant is not granted for these categories right here, the tag still fires, but it's gonna fire and send cookieless pings back to Google's server, okay? So basically it's gonna strip out things like session ID and client ID from the information you're sending back to Google, okay? You're essentially stripping out personal identifiable information, okay? Now, if this is compliant with GDPR, CCPA, or whatever law you're trying to be compliant with, if this is compliant or not, you got to talk to your legal team, okay? This is something that we always discuss with our customers, that Elevar does not give any legal advice, and it's always worth asking advice for a proper lawyer, proper legal team, okay? Awesome. So now we understand the difference between applying between built-in consent checks and between manual added consent requirements. I'm going to show you how to add consent requirements to all of your tags at once in a book-in fashion, okay? So you understand that adding requirements one by one can take quite some time. So to overcome this, you can go to admin, click on container settings, and then click on this checkbox here, enable consent overview, and save it, okay? Awesome. Now that it's saved, I can go back to my tags right here, and you'll see a new feature showing up for you, which is this little shield icon. Now this little shield, it allows you to add consent requirements to your tags at book, okay? So it makes it easy for you. For example, let's assume that I want to add the same consent requirements for all Facebook tags. I can check all of these checkboxes right here, click on the little shield, and require additional consent for these tags. I want to add storage, and save it. So it's telling me that it's going to apply this to 8 tags. Awesome. Now I see that the text disappeared from this little box called consent not configured, but if I scroll down, I see them in here, consent configured. Now let's assume that I want to add or keep only the built-in consent requirements for GA4 tags and also for the Pandectes tag. I can go right in here and click no additional consent requirement required and save it, okay? Now, Panos and everyone watching, you might be wondering, what is the difference between not set and no additional consent required? I know you know the answer for this, Panos, but essentially the answer here is that if you leave not set and save it, okay, by the time you try to publish this container, it is going to tell you that you have a bunch of tags which additional consent requirements were not set, okay? And since you enabled the consent overview, GTM will always try to make you, apply consent requirements to all the tags so you remain compliant. So to get rid of this little warning right here, we just want to go back in here, take everything that we want to leave the built-in consent requirements and just click on no additional consent required, okay? And now we kind of cleared our box of consent not configured. We will not see that warning anymore.
Felipe, you are giving us good habits because this is a good habit that makes sure that you always taken care of all your tags. So it's really important to that.
Yeah, I bet you see some customers that reach out to you and say, look, maybe there's something wrong. Sometimes it's just this matter of switching from not set to no additional consent requirements, right?
Exactly, yeah.
All right.
Absolutely right.
Thanks, Panos. All right, so now that we understand how to, apply consent requirements in book, what is the difference between built-in consent checks, manually added consent checks, it's time for us to actually see if those consent checks are working or not, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to preview the star.get Elevar in Google Tag Manager again. I'm just gonna clear the cookies just to make sure I don't have any stale cookie here that could conflict with the presentation right now. And I'm going to preview this star. And let's connect. All right. Okay, I'm connected. So I have here all the data layer events. As Panos mentioned, the first event that will come through is the consent initialization, which is going to fire the Pandectes CMP tag. Now, the Pandectes CMP tag by itself is going to set all of the consent requirements, consent categories to denied but this security storage, this will be granted, okay? Another way to visualize this is just clicking on consent here, makes things easier. Now, I see the cookie banner here. I did not interact with it, but I also know that I have some tags in Google Tag Manager that are supposed to fire on the DL user data event, okay? Now, as I click on this event right here and check the consent, GTM is telling me that by the time this event triggered, the consent state is denied for everything besides security storage. If I go back to my container here and check, for example, my Facebook site-wide pixel, it is one tag that is supposed to fire on the user data event. However, we added consent requirements to this tag, okay? So now if I go back to preview mode and check the tags that should have fired, I see that Facebook site-wide pixel has not fired at all. It says the tag was blocked by consent settings. And then the GA4 base tag actually fired because we don't have any additional consent requirements, just the built-in requirements, okay? Now, let's say I want to accept this. If I keep browsing, go to another page and go back to the preview mode, let's see the new page loading right here. Okay, now by the time I check the DL user data event, I see that my tag has actually fired because now the consent is granted by the time this event fires, okay? So this is a very useful and easy way to validate whether your consent tracking setup is working fine or not. And yeah, I hope you can enjoy this validation yourself, okay? Now, okay, before we wrap this up, Panos, I want just to give a bonus to everyone who is watching. I know we have a lot of Elevar customers and perhaps some people here who are not Elevar customers yet. But if you are looking to implement server-side tracking to your store, and you don't know how to navigate those consent challenges with server-side tracking, because it's a little bit different than just setting up consent requirements in Google Tag Manager, I want to show you how easy it is to do so using the Elevar setup, okay? So in the Elevar store, of course, we have the Elevar server-side tracking enabled. So this is the Elevar panel, and this tells us which marketing destinations are receiving data from the Elevar server. We have GA4 and Facebook. Now, if I want to send data back to these destinations only if the consent was granted by the user, I can simply go into my Shopify source right here, which is where we get the data from, and enable the consent mode, okay? Click yes, it's gonna tell me that, consent mode is no joke. You gotta be aware of what you're doing. You are now aware if you are watching this review where the antennas are explaining everything to you. Click enable. You can go to the guide, of course, just to make sure everything is working as it should and mark it as complete, okay? It's gonna give you a little of an advanced setting here. I'm gonna touch this one right now. And then you can go back. And now that you have consent mode enabled in your Shopify source, you can click on your destinations and also add consent requirements to the destinations. Now, one cool thing about Elevar is that we mimic the built-in consent checks from GA4 right on our server, okay? This is something you're not gonna find easily out there, okay? So you have the option to just keep the built-in consent checks, or if you want to add manual consent checks, you can also add those manual consent checks, which means that if the user has not granted with Edge storage and analytics storage, we will not send data back to GA4 at all, okay? And mark this as complete, go back. Same thing goes for Facebook. We just gotta add here the consent requirements to Facebook. We can pick Edge storage and analytics storage because this is what our lawyers told us, for example, and save it, okay? Gonna tell you to download some preview tags here that has those same consent requirements. Since we already added them to Google Tag Manager, we can skip this one. And that is it, easy peasy. All right, I hope you all Yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this webinar, and thank you for watching. Panos, thank you so much for joining me and explaining everything to everyone here.
Thank you, Felipe. Thank you for the presentation. It was great.
It was indeed. And I hope we can team up again in the future really soon and teach something else to the audience.
Sure
Okay.
thing. Sure thing. Yeah.
All right. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.